right, everybody. We've got another very special guest for you all this week. I want everybody to welcome to the show Dalton Shannon. Welcome, Dalton.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and you're always welcome now because, Chris, you didn't hear this when we had a little offside chat here. He is a 60s Batman fan, so
It's the best Batman.
the best
yeah.
live-action Batman for sure.
Even the comics, like 60s Batman comics, are the cream of the crop, man.
Yeah.
I saw a shirt online the other day that was Batman and Robin. It says fighting crime since '66.
Nice.
Oh, okay. I can respect
nice.
it. I mean, it's more like 1940, but I'll give it to him.
No, 66. Like that's when it started.
Yeah. I will say we don't talk about too much about 60s Batman, but I will say it's probably the most overpowered Batman just because his utility belt literally has an answer for everything.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, okay. The Silver Age of comics were some of the brightest in terms of imagination because you had that comics code that you had to work around while still like giving people something fresh and new every single month. So of course Batman's going to have shark repellent in his utility belt because he's not going to have a gun anymore. Dude's gonna have to figure out how to get rid of the shark in some imaginative way. Sometimes, especially in detective comics, sometimes there were 3 stories in one issue. You had to rapid fire that stuff.
Yeah.
Those guys were just mind to typewriter to publication, just non-stop. And it's wild to me to see the imagination on display in those pages. It's wild.
Yeah. It's
have you guys ever seen that video that's why Dark Knight Rises is just the ending is just a remake of the Batman movie?
Oh, how to get rid of a bomb?
Yeah, some days you can't just get rid of a bomb.
You just can't get rid of a bomb. Yeah, he runs it out into the harbor, right? That's pretty much what he does in the movie.
It's a phenomenal breakdown, and it just brings a smile to my face.
Holy shit! Christopher Nolan pulled a fast one on everybody.
Genius, my ass.
Yeah, he's copyright infringement. Okay, so Dalton, we're gonna talk about comics now.
Yeah,
it's first time on the show. We're gonna put you through the awful gauntlet of telling us your origin story. It probably went beyond Batman 66 of why you love comics or got into comics. So give us the lowdown.
Yeah, so comics is the only thing I kind of know and and do. There's no plan B when it comes to life. It's comics or bust. I was born in '92, so I was raised on that X-Men the animated series, Batman, Spider-Man, all of those cartoons, which made me obsessed with the characters. So I was I was playing with the action figures, all sorts of stuff. But then it got to a point where I was 8. And I was with my mom in a grocery store, and I'm convinced I was the last person on Earth to ever do this. But I saw an issue of Spider-Man on a spinner rack at the grocery store, striking John Romita Jr. Spider-Man cover, and I was like, "What is this?" And I grabbed it and I flipped through it, and I was like, "Whoa! You mean I don't have to just watch it on TV? I can have it whenever I want?" And I was upset, especially with Spider-Man as a kid. I was upset. I got a big encyclopedia. I had all the Spider-Man stuff, and I would buy Spider-Man comics every single time I went to a store, and Batman too. But I eventually grew out of Batman and Spider-Man, and I branched out to other superheroes and other comic genres in general. But as a kid, that's what hooked me was Batman and Spider-Man. But what made me fall in love with the medium and making comics was specifically Dave Pilkey's Captain Underpants books.
Nice.
So Captain Underpants, great all ages novel series, and it's about 2 8-year-old boys who make their own comics and end up making their own superhero in real life and all the shenanigans that go into that. But as an 8-year-old reading that about other 8-year-olds, I was like, I can do that. I like superheroes. I like comics. And so I started writing and drawing my own books, hand stapling them. And I've never looked back. Like, comics have always been what I've wanted to do, and now that Frankenstein is taking off, and we've got our other series, Mechaton, coming out. I don't know. There's not like an end goal. It's always like, this is the life. This is comics. I just like make words and pictures, making a story. That's all I've ever wanted to do.
That's awesome. I think this is the first time we've heard Captain Underpants coming up in an origin story. No, which is great, because like the best part of the Scholastic Book Fair at school was like people didn't know they had comic books at the Scholastic Book Fair. That was the best part about it. Yeah.
No, like even in like the early to mid 2000s, like Marvel was putting out digest sized collections of like Spider-Man, Fantastic Four.
Right.
They were like manga sized, and I was buying them off the book fair. I had no idea what these. It took me until I was like 20 years old to realize, oh, this was like an all ages imprint that lasted for like a year.
Yeah.
But Marvel was doing, and as a kid I had no idea. It's wild, and I cherish those digest issues. It's great.
So I always
thank you, Scholastic.
Yeah, exactly.
I talk about all the time, like the Captain Underpants, and then what was the book he did after that? Dogman.
I love Dogman. Dogman,
and how those books outsell like everything that we read, and they're huge. Yeah. And I think you are the one that's going to fulfill my prophecy, because I said that somebody who grew up reading those books is going to make the Dark Knight Returns of Captain Underpants.
Maybe Frankenstein is that, but I don't think Captain Underpants needs a Dark Knight Returns. Not every character needs one, but I do say that there is an entire generation raised on book fair comics that are aching and are like making their own books. Like, you see it on Webtoons, and you see it through Kickstarter. Like, there's an entire generation that traditional publishing isn't necessarily an avenue for them. And so the internet has allowed us to make our own stories and show wear our influences on our sleeves and make art that you couldn't do in traditional publishing, in a sense.
Yeah. It was a lot easier for me to convince my mom for $20 for a book fair than to tell her I was going to a comic book store. So that's how I got around it. I was like, yeah, these are just books that I bought. You don't need to check them out.
I bought
don't worry about it, Mom.
I bought one book of Captain Underpants, whereas I'd come home with 20 copies of like the Extinction Agenda from X-Men. Yeah. I'm like, no, Mom, they're tie-ins. Like, you don't understand.
I got them at school. It's like, come on. Yeah. Awesome. So, I mean, we're going to talk about Frankenstein the Unconquered, because that's the relevant thing today. But do you want to just give us a lowdown on Mechaton? Just give us a quick overview of that before we go on to Frankenstein.
So Mechaton is our secondary series that we also run on Kickstarter. It's an all-ages sci-fi comic, a very rule of cool. The elevator pitch is basically Scott Pilgrim meets Pacific Rim.
Nice.
Two siblings find a glove that has fallen from space, and anything they punch with it turns into a mech that they use to fight giant monsters. So they punch a hot dog cart, robot. They punch a house. They punch a car. Anything turns into a robot, and they use it to fight monsters. It's very it's super fast paced. It's very snappy. It's humorous. It's got a lot of like shonen anime tropes built into it. It's so much fun. It's got a lot of heart. It's about community. It's about relationships, and it's about punching giant monsters in the face with a giant robot made out of a hot dog cart. Like,
that's amazing.
It's so much fun, and our art team on it just like it's demanding book, because we're like, okay, dude punches like, I don't know, an IKEA, and that becomes a robot. Like, okay,
draw that.
Draw that.
Yeah.
And Fernando Pinto, like, bless him, is able to make the robots look so badass and yet functional. It's so much fun to make. It's the complete opposite of Frankenstein in terms of tone. That you might look at Mechaton and not know that the same people made Frankenstein, but it's so much fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I got to check that out. I had no idea that was a thing. So All right, so now let's talk Frankenstein the Unconquered, because this is the second Kickstarter about this project, right? Because I remember the first one when it was out.
Good, somebody does.
Yeah, I was there for it. But I mean, dude, you guys funded in what 3 days?
72 hours, yeah.
Yeah, 3 days funding. You're double the goal. And as this episode launches, you probably have about, I don't know, 5 to 6 hours to still back this project for everybody. So give us the lowdown on this book, because it's awesome.
Yeah, Frankenstein the Unconquered is the quick elevator pitch is Frankenstein meets Conan the Barbarian, right? It's Frankenstein with a sword. 500 years after the end of Mary Shelley's original novel, Frank thaws from the ice into a bombed-out apocalyptic wasteland that's kind of pretty much as hideous as he is. And he has another chance to kind of like build a world of his own, to kind of actually finally fit in. But thanks to the kind of inherited chips on the shoulder that he gets from his father and the era he comes from and the learned traits, he can't just be peaceful. He meets everything with violence. And so he exacts a tear of vengeance across the wasteland, fighting monsters with a sword and going to space and like punching supernovas. Like if it belongs on a Megadeth album cover, it belongs in Frankenstein. Like it's monsters fighting monsters, and hopefully with a little bit of meat underneath. But it's so much fun just to kind of play with the tropes of not only what Shelley was originally doing in her novel, but monster fiction and barbarian fiction, and just honestly metal in itself, and making a story out of that. It's crazy cool.
Yeah.
How does Frankenstein find a dinosaur?
With a sword. Obviously, yeah.
Okay.
The world of Frankenstein is very like we kind of deal with it as we come to it, you know? Like it's kind of like we describe the world as like the Simpsons Springfield, where like before episode 18, you never knew that Springfield had a coastline, but now that the story demands it, Springfield has a coastline, right? Mm-hmm. So Frankenstein is like, now there is a pit that eats souls that is just in the middle of a metropolitan area. Who knows what that's about? Right. And so, there's a dinosaur there too. And Frankenstein is like, well, I'm going to punch it. Like, I don't have, like, how else am I going to deal with it? And that's kind of like the core of the series in itself, is that Frank can't imagine a solution to a problem that isn't kill it, punch it to death. And so throughout the series, we kind of explore why that is, if he can actually be better than that, if he can get that chip off his shoulder, if he can kind of cast aside the toxic traits he kind of inherited from his father, and be a better person, and not necessarily meet every single problem with violence. And it's going to be it's a long ride, and who knows if Frank actually will, be that person that he might want to be. But it's always fun to try and see him try, at least.
I love this double page spread you have here, because it's Frank holding the sword. It's Frank fighting an enchantress of some sort, and then he's riding a dinosaur. Yeah, the one on screen right now if you're watching the video version. Yeah, and then what I assume is a Hydra, and then it's just like, hey, it's King Frank.
Yeah.
With a rocket behind him, because why not?
Yeah, that's his exile into space. Like we wanted that kind of 2-page so Frank thaws from the ice 500 years after the end of the novel, and then there is a 200-year gap in between him thawing and the start of issue number 1. So that kind of montage is like, here are some of those like typical Conan adventures that Frank would get up to in that 200-year gap, and then he pisses off all the wrong people during that 200 years, and they shoot him up into space. in exile, and now we get to Frankenstein issue number 1, and Frank is coming back from space, pissed off. He's killed all the stars, and he's ready to kill everyone who shot him into space in the first place.
Amazing. Yeah, I know I'm going to be grabbing the digital catch-up tier for sure. Let's talk about what you're offering. I mean, you guys are double the funding you need. So for you, this creates this gives you a little more breathing room for another issue, right? So can you talk about that a little bit? Like, do you have any plans?
Oh yeah. So when we started Frankenstein, it was, oh god, do I have it on hand? No, I don't. We started doing Frankenstein as like little 8-page ash cans, where we would do my co-creator, co-writer Wells Thompson and I would do little 8-page stories, and then I would draw them, and then we'd hand staple them, and we'd go to comic conventions and show them to people. It was an experience, that's for sure. But Frank was one of the titles that we started off doing. And it was like, we were just doing little vignettes, because 8 pages really, they don't allow for much more than a vignette. Like a scene, maybe a scene or two, and then like the big thing, and then the end. So we had kind of like 4 issues of Frankenstein, 4 or 5, and with a basic kind of like structure. It kept kind of going forward. And we thought, that like there's a story there. And, we met with an editor, and they liked the stories. And so we actually got them, we gave them a facelift in Descent into Dread through Caliber Comics. Okay. It's an anthology, horror anthology. Frank is actually kind of like the through line. So there's like 4 or 5 Frank stories in it, which take the ash cans and kind of give them a facelift. But once we did the anthology, we thought, Frank is so cool that he deserves kind of an ongoing story. We want to kind of expand the 8-pagers into something more. And I kind of sat down over the course of like a month and a half, and I think I wrote 13 issues of Frankenstein, which is like, the bulk, like that's the series. Frankenstein the Unconquered is like 12 to 13 issues. Split between 2 different arcs with like a buffer in the middle. So we've got we definitely have plans for like an overarching story, but this first story is probably like about 5 issues where we kind of deal with the ramifications of his revenge quest, coming back from space to exact revenge on those who sent him to space. And there's a twist at the end that kind of launches us into the second half of the series. But we definitely have a lot going on with Frank as an ongoing. More monsters, more mayhem, more violence, more over the top action. It just goes more and more and more as every issue we're like, okay, we did this last issue. How do we go further from there?
Yep. Awesome.
And like, how do you, well, first let me say this. You've hit a bunch of stretch goals throughout this, and one of the things I love, because this is what the Conan book was doing at Marvel for a while, is you're putting like a 4-page prose story in the back of the book as well. So where did that idea come from, Conan, or how'd you guys decide on that?
Yeah, the prose piece was for sure inspired by Conan, and especially the pulp origins of Conan. That Howard stuff, because all the pulps back in the 20s and 30s, 40s is all prose. Like you have a cool art piece on the front, but it's all prose. So we kind of wanted to pay homage to those roots and kind of have a little prose short story in the back. The recent Marvel Conan stuff also had prose stories in the back, and so we're like, that works. We can do that, and it gave us a chance to kind of stretch our creative muscles. Because when you're writing comic scripts, it's very utilitarian, where it's like, okay, here's what's happening in this panel. Here's what's happening in this panel. They say this. They say this. But when you're writing prose, you have to build all of that yourself. You can't just rely on Mary to make what you are putting on the page make it look cool. You have to make it look cool by yourself with just words. So it was a great little exercise. And so to kind of dip into that pulp origin and kind of explore a lost story in that 200 years where he's doing the Conan stuff before he gets sent into space, was, I don't know, it's a lot of fun to just explore and do. And I don't know, I'm not a huge prose writer. I tend to, I've learned over like the past year and a half, I have crippling ADD. So like comic scripting is perfect for me because I get to boom, boom, boom. Well, I get it out of my system. But with the prose, I have to sit and I have to sit with it and I have to write and I have to edit it and I have to take my time with it. So it's been a great exercise in that regard and get to really test the limits of what I can do creatively. That's not to say Wells doesn't have a hand in the prose. It's just the prose mostly comes from my side of the bits, and he comes in and edits. It's like, okay, no, this is cool. Maybe change this line here and there. It's a strong editing relationship that we have together, and the prose is just another piece of that. Yeah.
So yeah, writing comics is always more fun because you could, like you said with your mecha book, like he punches a hot dog cart. Artists, figure it out.
I don't have to think about that. I just have to say he turns a hot dog cart into a robot. Fernando, you got this?
You got it. Yeah.
To his credit, Fernando always has it. But like sometimes I feel bad because I'm like, oh man, I am doing literally zero work here.
So I had like two more things in your campaign I really wanted to jump on. One, like, how did you hook up with Mary? She's obviously a super talented artist. What was the story there for you guys getting together and working with her?
Oh, Mary's great. I love Mary. We actually met Mary working on Dread. She was so it's an anthology. Wells and I wrote every story in the anthology, but it's like 9 different artists through 14 or so different stories. And we actually found Mary on Twitter or Instagram. And she actually did a story in it. It's very like dystopian kind of sci-fi feel. She didn't work on the Frankenstein stories. That was actually Leonardo. Let me find the page. Yeah, he actually did the Frankenstein stuff. It's super cool, but it's not as like heavy and dense and crosshatched as Mary's. But we worked on Mary with that one story, and we loved her style. And when we were talking about bringing Frankenstein into an ongoing, we're like, Mary's art really kind of fits the tone of Frankenstein. I don't know if we already have the connection. Like, I don't know if there's anyone who could really bring Frankenstein to life quite like Mary does. And we talked to her about it, and Mary, to her credit, is super ecstatic about working on the book, or at least she's pretending to be to us, because she's like, nobody ever asks me to draw this kind of stuff. Like, this stuff is so over the top, it's super violent, it's super fun, like, it's just fun to draw. And she's on board with like the coloring. Like, she's not the colorist on the book, but she's on board with the coloring and the page layouts. And we always tell her, look, the script that we're giving you, we do full scripts. So we do panel 1 is this, panel 2 is this. But we always tell her, look, you're the artist. You know what's the most visually interesting. If there's something on the page that you think would be better or worse, or you need to cut or add, like, do it, because we trust you. And she has done nothing but prove that she is the artist for the book. Like, we gave her a 12 panel page. This montage page.
Yeah.
It's 12 panels, which could be an issue in and of itself. Like that's an issue. She does it and we're like, okay, we'll probably have to like adjust that page. No, she brings it back 12 panels, and it's not static like boxes. It's one thing, and then she follows it up with the double page spread. Like,
yeah, killing it.
she's killing it. Mary's a gem, and Dahlia's colors just make the lines pop even more.
Yep,
and then of course Nathan Kemp's letters make our writing just that much better.
Awesome.
And then my last thing on your campaign, and listen, we've been really nice to you up to this point. I'll give you a little critique here from this.
Go for it.
So we have this tabletop RPG one shot that you have in here. It looks really cool, set in the Frankenstein world.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see anywhere on here where you say how you get it or what RPG it's compatible with.
That's probably that's on us. The RPG was I believe it was either a tier or a stretch goal for the first Frankenstein campaign. We had met a creator, Jacob Fleming, who is very into the D&D community, the tabletop community, and he makes his own rule books, his own campaigns for all sorts of stuff. And we're like, hey, Frankenstein kind of fits into this world. Would you be interested in checking it out? He was very on board, and he made Death Stalks the Damned, and it was fantastic, and we had a lot of fun with it. But we offered it as a reward tier in the first campaign, and now in our second campaign, it is an add-on, or it's an extra thing you can get as specific. Each tier has its specific rewards, and the Death Stalks the Damned is included. It's in the everything tier for sure. And if it's not on any other reward tier, you can get it as an add-on. But it definitely utilizes the what is it called? The Monsters and Mutants kind of a rule book.
Mm-hmm.
The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Sure, why not? No, it's D&D adjacent. Yes, that's
Mutants and Mayhem. Yeah.
Yes, that's the rule guide that it kind of utilizes. But it's a lot of fun. I haven't actually had a chance to sit down with people and play it because my friends and I can't play D&D without completely derailing at every possible turn. But I've heard from a few people who have tried it out that it is actually it's a fun enough time. It's good.
Awesome. I mean, I'm a sucker for the foil covers, so I know people always love that.
My brain went to it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutants and Other Madness is the tabletop role playing game. When you said that, I'm like, what? The TMNT game?
Yeah.
Okay, but let's be real here. IDW. Frankenstein meets the Ninja Turtles would be pretty.
Yeah, IDW. What's up? What's up, IDW? I think some of our guests have written for them. Maybe we can reach out. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. Awesome. And as people are listening, there's still several hours to back this awesome project. It's already funded, and like you said, there's tons of issues coming. At least 11 more, if my math is right.
Yeah.
Hopefully. And Dalton, this was awesome. And if our listeners and our followers want to follow you and all the stuff you're doing, where can we send them?
So you can follow me on any social media that matters at Dalton K. Shannon. Wells is at Wells Thomp, THOMP. But of course, we have the Kickstarter. Our Twitter's linked to all of our any Kickstarter is always going to be prominent there. Wells has a Ko-Fi, KO-FI, at Wells Thompson, where you can buy any physical issues or digital that you missed. So you can pick up Mechaton there, you can pick up Frankenstein there. Descent into Dread you can get there, so you can get the first appearance of Frankenstein.
Nice.
That's all through the Ko-Fi, or you can pick them up on the current Kickstarter. But yeah, that's all the different kind of internet locales that we like to inhabit. Yeah.
Great.
And to all the listeners, watchers out there, remember, as always, I will have the links in the show notes down below, so make sure to click those, check out the campaign, and if you watch this late for some reason, I mean, what are you doing? I'll also have that Ko-Fi link as well, so you can still pick up issue 1 through that.
Yep.
So
and we'll be launching Frankenstein issue 3 and 4 at some point next year. So we'll have a double campaign coming out next year for sure.
Awesome. That's very
and there's the teaser for Dalton's return. Dalton, thank you so much for being on the show this week, man. We appreciate the time, and we'll definitely have to have you back for 3 and 4
for sure.
For sure.